Welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, we would like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children.
Once upon a time, there was a bear. Now, he didn't have a name because he was a bear. Bears don't get names. People get names. Sometimes bears get names if a person gives them a name. And that was the crux of this bear's problem. This bear wanted a name. He was a very large bear, and he could never get a person to stick around long enough to give him a name. Usually when he came across a person, the person would say, "Ah, it's a bear!" And the bear thought that perhaps he could get a better name than "Ah!" So he resolved that he was going to somehow find a person who would be willing to give him a name. So he walked around the woods for a long time until he finally found a cabin. And there was a man who lived in the cabin. And the man was an unusual man. He chopped wood in order to make himself a fire, but he did not grow crops to feed himself. Instead, the bear would watch him from the woods, and he would see that the man would sit at a computer, and he would type. And then once he'd typed for a long time, he would print out a big, thick set of pages, and he would mail them off. And that was what the man did. He did writing. The bear thought that this was a very unusual thing to do. Because if you're a bear, the usual things to do are to find things to eat. And that's pretty much it. And sleep. Bears like to sleep, particularly all winter.
Hey, I think his name could be Eat Sleep.
Eat Sleep?
Yeah.
Maybe. But anyway, the bear thought that because this man spent a lot of time, really most of his time, working with words, that he would be a good person to name the bear. But the bear knew that he had to have the man see him without being afraid of him. Because although the bears can be very dangerous, and even this bear could be very dangerous, he wasn't dangerous to this man in particular because he wanted him to name him. And he didn't want the man to be afraid because he wanted a name better than "Ah!" Because he just didn't think that had a very nice ring to it. So, the bear decided that the first thing he was going to do was to let the man know that he was around. So he waited until nighttime, when the man was asleep, and then he walked out into the clearing where the cabin was, and he found some muddy spots, and he left footprints in the muddy spots, big bare paw prints. And then he went back and slept for the rest of the night. And he got up in the morning and he watched the man as the man came out of the cabin, and the man saw the paw prints, and he walked around. He saw the man looking around the edges of the woods, but the bear was hidden behind a bush, and the man didn't see him. And then the man went back in the cabin. Well, the bear decided, let a few days go by to give the man get used to the idea that there was a bear around. Then he waited until the man was outside, and he walked around in the woods loudly, crunch, 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 crunch. And the man sort of walked back to the door of his cabin, but he did not go inside. He just sort of stood by the door of his cabin, and the bear walked off. He did this for several days. Whenever the man came out, the bear would walk around. And finally he decided that the man didn't seem to be too scared, and so he came to the edge of the clearing where the man could see him, and he just stood there and sort of made bear sounds like that. The man went back and stood right at the door of his cabin with his hand on the door and waited. And the bear waited. And they looked at each other. And the man looked at the bear, and he finally said, "Shoo! Shoo, bear!" Now the bear thought about it for a minute. And after thinking about it for a minute, he decided that he didn't like the name "Shoo" any better than he liked the name "Ah, it's a bear." So the bear decided that he would try again the next day. So he walked off. He came again the next morning when the man was outside for his walk. And he came again to the edge of the clearing, and the man looked at the bear, and the bear looked at the man, and the man said, "Well, you're quite a persistent bear, aren't you?" The bear thought about it. Persistent. No, it just didn't have a very bear-like sound to it. He thought that perhaps if the other bears learned that he had a name like Persistent, that they would laugh at him. So he walked off. He decided he would try again the next day. But the next day, the man was gone, and he was gone for 3 whole days. The bear checked every morning, but the man wasn't there. So the bear went off and did bear things. And so finally the man came back the morning of the 4th day, and the man was there. The bear walked to the edge of the clearing. The man looked at him. He said, "Now I wonder what you want." The bear looked at him. The man looked at the bear. The man took a step away from the door. He said, "You are a very unusual bear." Unusual. The bear sort of liked the ring to that. He decided he would leave and think about it. He tried it out all day. Unusual. "My name is Unusual." "Hi, my name is Unusual. I'm a bear." And he tried it out on other bears. "Hey, I've got a name. My name's Unusual." They all thought maybe that was a pretty good name, because they agreed. They had never heard of a bear that wanted a name before, and they weren't 100% sure exactly what unusual meant, but they thought that it fit him rather well. So, the bear decided after a full day that that was going to be his name. His name was going to be Unusual the Bear. And for several days he went about the woods just doing his bear things. But it began to occur to him that he really sort of owed the man, because the man had made up a name for him. And so he decided that he wanted to do something nice for the man. And he thought about it for a while. He thought about bringing the man some nice yummy grubs.
What are grubs?
Grubs are like insect larvae. They look like little worms.
Yeah.
Bears think they're tasty.
Gross.
People, not so much. And he thought about bringing the man some berries, but the problem is that bears can't really pick berries. They usually just kind of eat them off the bushes. And so the bear tried it. He got a big mouthful of berries, and he went up and he just spat them on the man's doorstep. And then he went back into the woods and he watched the man. And the man came out and made a really disgusted face and just sort of cleaned the berries up and threw them away. And as he walked back into his house, the man said, "Now that is definitely one unusual bear." Well, the bear decided he needed to think some more. So he thought, he said, "I think I'll bring him a nice fish." And so he caught a nice big salmon. He caught it in his mouth. And the next day he took it to the man and he dropped the fish on the man's doorstep. Now, the man might have liked the fish. The bear had carried it very gently and it barely had tooth marks in it. But the problem was that the man was not there. He was off on another one of his trips. And so the fish sat there on the man's porch for 1 day, 2 days. By the time the man got back 3 days later, the fish was rotten and it smelled awful. And the man stepped into the clearing and went, "Oh, what is that smell?" And he walked over and he picked up the fish and he threw it away. He said, "That bear is insane." Now, Unusual didn't like the name Insane as much, and he thought that he needed to think of something really good. So this time he thought. And he spent 3 whole days thinking, and he finally had it. He went to his favorite old tree, and he knocked a hole in it, and there inside was a beehive. And he took a great big honeycomb, and he took it and he set it on the man's doorstep. And then he went and he watched from the edge of the clearing, and the man opened the door, and he saw the honeycomb just dripping with honey, and he said, "Oh my, what a gift." And he took it into his house. And before he did, he turned and he saw the bear watching from the edge of the clearing, and he said, "Thank you, you unusual bear, you." And the bear just nodded his head and walked off into the woods. And the man and the bear never saw each other again.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and witty commentary were supplied by my children. The music was created by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it or leave a review on your podcast provider. Our website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com, and you can also find us on most social media. I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.